The Ring Magazine updated their pound-for-pound rankings, and as you can see, Canelo Alvarez has dropped to number 6 out of the top 5, replaced by Artur Beterbiev at number 4 and Dmitry Bivol at number 5. And this is a very interesting debate because I have not been very high on Canelo being top 5 pound for pound for a while. I've had him in the top 5, but I had him behind all of these guys at the top. Usyk at number 1, Inoue number 2, Crawford number 3. So for him to be out of the top 5 isn't that shocking to me, but Canelo, in many people's eyes, is still the face of boxing. I'm not saying I see him as that, but a lot of people do. So this is the time to, in my opinion, have the debate. Is this fair? Now, a lot of people are very split on whether Dmitry Bivol should have jumped above Canelo in the pound-for-pound rankings after he beat him, because when he beat him, it was without question. It was arguably the easiest career title defense for Dmitry Bivol ever. Now, some say that that doesn't count as him jumping above Canelo because it was outside of Canelo's natural weight. But if you really look at it, Bivol is a small light heavyweight, Canelo is a huge super middleweight. So we could debate back and forth forever whether he should have jumped above Canelo after he beat him or not. Artur Beterbiev, he's always been a bit obscure when it comes to pound-pound rankings because I always felt that this guy was top 10 easily, and based on his skills and his abilities and how great of a fighter I believe he could become, I never doubted for a second that he should be probably in the top 5. But because the light heavyweight division has been notoriously weak, I mean it's really been one of the weakest divisions in boxing, it's always been hard to really judge where he should be. And you know, that is something that Terence Crawford went through when he was at light welterweight. He ran through everybody, but the division was so weak. Now, Inoue has had moments in his career where he's fought weak competition. I mean, his last title defense, if you can call it that, was against a very, very overmatched opponent. So, because Artur Beterbiev has had those kind of weak opposition fights for a while, he hasn't really been able to prove how good he is. I mean, if you have a look at his career right here, he was IBF World Champion against Enrico Nolin, a obscure opponent who nobody really was that high on back in 2017. After that, Callum Johnson, Alexander Gvozdyk, that was a really good win, but that was really his last top level opponent who you could say proved how good Artur Beterbiev was, because Marcus Brown was coming off a long layoff, and I believe he was coming off a loss at the time. Joe Smith Jr., tough working class blue collar guy, but was never going to prove to, you know, how great Beterbiev was. Anthony Yard, he has only been good at fighting cans because that's all he has beaten. Callum Smith, again, overmatched opponent. Dmitry Bivol was the only guy who Artur Beterbiev could prove how good he would be, because to beat that caliber opponent would be tremendous. And it's 5 years after the victory over Alexander Gvozdyk. So yeah, Beterbiev, he has been a victim of just a weak division and being so great that his power is enough to beat these guys who again haven't really been good enough to challenge him. The victory over Dmitry Bivol is, in my opinion, historical for Beterbiev, because for him to beat a guy who was in his prime, undefeated, and to be able to do it without having to rely on his power because Bivol was too good to be knocked out, and he wasn't even knocked down once in the fight, which was a first for Beterbiev since turning professional. It was, again, an historical victory for him to beat him the way he did, regardless of how you felt about the decision. And again, that is something which Canelo Alvarez has not been able to do for a very, very long time. Because if you look at Canelo Alvarez's career, Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, Jamel Charlo was jumping up 2 weight divisions, John Ryder incredibly overmatched, Gennady Golovkin well at the end of his career. He hasn't been fighting top competition really since Dmitry Bivol. Before that, you can see he had a lot of good victories at super middleweight, but None of these guys were established world champions. Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, these guys, they held the titles fair and square, but none of them were established, none of them were elite. So how good of a victories were those really? And you could easily make the claim that Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol have had plenty of those fights their entire careers. True, that is fair enough. I just went through Beterbiev's career. But they did prove that they were clearly above these fighters at super middleweight who Canelo beat. So in reality, to go back to the last time Canelo had a victory as good as Beterbiev's over Dmitry Bivol, it would have to be the Gennady Golovkin second fight. That was the last time Canelo fought and beat somebody on the caliber of a Dmitry Bivol. And Golovkin, like Bivol, had fought overmatched opponents throughout most of his career, and he was an undisputed champion. So in reality, the victory Beterbiev had over Bivol the other weekend is very similar to what Canelo did to Gennady Golovkin in the second fight. That was more than half a decade ago, so it's fair enough, in my opinion, for Beterbiev to jump above Canelo Alvarez, because recency does matter. I mean, we can't really give Canelo too much credit in terms of putting him in the top 5 pound for pound when he's beating guys who nobody expects to even really challenge Canelo. I mean, John Ryder, Jaime Munguia, Edgar Berlanga, Jamel Charlo. Even before he showed up for a payday, I was one of the people saying that fight was complete rubbish, and the Gennady Golovkin trilogy wasn't anything spectacular, and Golovkin himself had been holding out for a payday. And talking about not even trying like Jamel Charlo, Golovkin went in there and just went in to survive. So while it is a bit strange to have Canelo out of the top 5 in the Ring Magazine pound for pound rankings, I think it is more than fair. Again, I've already gone over whether or not Dmitry Bivol deserves to be above him. You guys comment down below whether or not you think Bivol deserves to be above Canelo given his weak resume, or whether the fact that because he beat him 12 rounds to nothing, he should be there. And Artur Beterbiev, I believe he definitely deserves to be above Canelo. And just to repeat something I said at the start of the video, I always had Canelo below Crawford, Inoue and Usyk, since they all won their undisputed world titles. So I only had Canelo at number 4 anyway. And by the way, I still think these rankings here are what they should be. I still think Usyk should be number 1. I still think Inoue should be number 2. Crawford number 3. So for once, I actually agree with the rankings pretty much point for point. Drop your thoughts down below. Do you think this is fair or not? How do you rank these guys pound for pound? Catch you later. More videos coming soon.